minutes, executive session, and final wrap-up questions. At the end of each section, I'd love it if you would ask questions. You can type those as you go along. When a question occurs to you, type it in, and Christine will see those and report them out to me at the end of every section. So let's begin by talking about incorporated and municipal libraries. It seems to me we often have these conversations. So we're going to do a quick poll. Christine, I think you can release that. So is your library incorporated, municipal, or not sure?
Amy, I'll need just a moment.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry about that. You should be seeing it now.
Okay, can everybody see the poll?
I have 82% voted.
Okay, we're going to let you report out the results, Christine.
Okay.
Poll in progress, I can see that. 3 choices: incorporated, municipal, and not sure. If you're a community library, you got to pick one of those 3.
91% have voted. Don't be shy.
Okay, Christine, why don't you tell us the results?
94%, with 94% of the votes in, we have 69% municipal, 22% incorporated, 9% not sure.
Okay. So, there we have it. Most of you are municipal libraries. We have a few who are incorporated, and we have a few who aren't sure. So I'm just going to do this quickly. Let's see if we can get the screen to show again. So municipal libraries are libraries founded by a town vote. There's a public board of trustees, and every municipal library must follow the open meeting law. If you're still not sure about whether you're a municipal library, the reference is the Law of Public Libraries, which is on the Vermont Department of Libraries website. Trustees, you might want to talk with your director about this, and all of you think about asking your Department of Libraries consultant to meet with the board. So that's municipal libraries. Incorporated libraries are actually private, nonprofit corporations. The board is technically a private board, and the library was created by a private trust, deed, or act. These libraries, the 22% of you that are incorporated libraries, need not follow the open meeting law. You are not bound to follow the open meeting law. So the one thing I have to say to incorporated libraries, and many of your directors have been writing to me recently, is that we do have a statement in the Vermont minimum standards for public libraries. We ask, does the board meet at least every 3 months in meetings warned and open to the public according to the Vermont open meeting law? We aren't changing that standard, so if you decide not to follow the open meeting law, you will fail the minimum standards, and that's perfectly up to you. that is really a decision that every board can make. My take on the new open meeting law is that we're going to have a year of some struggle, some learning new things, but by the end of the year, I'm pretty sure everybody's going to be on board. So I would really encourage the incorporated libraries. I know 141 libraries in Vermont out of 158 meet the minimum standards. And to my way of thinking, the new updated open meeting law isn't a terrific departure. So that's where I'm coming from. People are also asking me about Friends of the Library. The Friends of the Library, I'm hoping you have a 501c3. That's a federal tax designation, but that's a real strong indication that the Friends are not a public body and would not follow the open meeting law. The exception would be if somehow the Friends were organized as a committee of the board. All committees of the board have to follow the open meeting law. And for a few libraries, I do know municipal libraries who have gone after the 501c3 designation. You are still public bodies. You are still municipal libraries, and you must follow the open meeting law. I'm happy to talk about any of these issues in more detail. I know the library directors have my email, and I'm hoping that trustees do as well. Please continue to feed me questions as we go along. Okay, so incorporated, municipal, and the open meeting law. Christine, have we got any questions?
Sorry about that. So far, what I have are concerning the hand raising, although
Okay.
we did have one person say that they were neither. So we'll of the types. So we'll get back to you on that and see if it's really a question.
Okay. I'm also very familiar over time with libraries not being sure, and we can help you make up your mind and take the steps to create a real entity for you. I'm a little concerned that libraries that are neither incorporated nor municipal don't really have the protection of law. We really only have those two libraries under Vermont statute. So I'd really like to get you sorted out, but that's a process that's been happening for years. So let's go on to talk about public meetings. So the law defines a public meeting as a gathering of a quorum of the members of the board to discuss business or to take action. And you notice I've given you these little annotations throughout the PowerPoint. That's Vermont statutes annotated, and it tells you exactly where in the law you can get the reference that I'm giving you on this page. So public meetings are a gathering of a quorum, that is to say a majority of the board. So if you have a 5-member board, a quorum is 3. If you have a 15-member board, do the math, a quorum is, let's see, half of 15. A quorum is 8. And what the law says is when you are together discussing business and taking action, that means you're in a public meeting. So the quorum, when the quorum is discussing anything, the public body has the authority to decide. That's the definition. And what that means is that if a quorum of the board gets together in a parking lot, in these stories, it's always a parking lot, to talk about library business, to make decisions, then you have triggered the requirement for the open meeting law. And if you haven't warned that meeting, if you aren't taking minutes at that meeting, if you haven't posted the agenda ahead for that meeting, you are in violation of the open meeting law. So this is not new, but this is a great chance to revisit those issues and make sure that when a group of us are gathered together discussing the library's business, we have made careful arrangements to indicate that we're in a public meeting. All provisions of the open meeting law apply to board committees and subcommittees. So I want to be really clear on that. If the board creates an ad hoc committee to work on bylaws, to work on fundraising, to deal with building issues, that board committee has its own quorum, its own majority, that is to say, and its own need to follow the open meeting law. So be careful of that. And one of the things I often come across in open discussions is, yeah, but what if the committee has people on it that aren't members of the board? That doesn't make any difference. It's perfectly legitimate to ask community members to serve on a committee. So you might well have a committee that included both board members and people who are not trustees, and that committee would still have its own quorum, its own majority, its own need to follow the open meeting law. Public meetings, now we're in the area of new, are allowed to have electronic, phone, or written correspondence of trustees in order to do three things. So this is brand new. You are allowed to email fellow trustees in order to schedule a meeting, in order to organize agendas, in order to distribute materials to discuss at a meeting. So for example, you've got a special meeting coming up. It's budget time and you know you've got to fit in one extra meeting. You may email, phone, or write to, send postcards to your trustees in order to set that date, in order to put together an agenda. You may also email or write or call people to distribute materials. For example, notes or materials that you know are going to come up at the meeting. That's permitted. Before we didn't have actual written law to guide us, but I do want to remind you that any of those communications need to be available for inspection under the Public Records Act. So if you schedule a meeting via email, be aware that whether it's a public computer or a private email account, you may need to produce that communication for a public records request. Any other correspondence beyond scheduling a meeting, organizing an agenda, or distributing materials is considered a meeting. So if you get an email addressed to all of the board members asking you to discuss the business of the board outside those three reasons, and you use reply all to discuss that business, you are now in an illegal meeting, an illegal public meeting. I'm hoping there are questions coming because I think this is a little bit confusing. So another thing we finally have proper dispensation to do is meetings when trustees are not all together in the same room. So the Secretary of State, the legislature have now laid out the rules for attending meetings remotely. So the rules are trustees may attend meetings remotely. They may participate fully and vote. But there are a couple of extra rules to make sure that we're really clear on what's happening. Votes must be taken by roll call when there are any trustees who are attending the meeting remotely. So Peter Jones is in Seattle. He calls into the meeting. There's a speakerphone in the middle of the table. Every time there's a vote, somebody will have to read the roll call and record the votes so that it's clear that the remote trustees are voting. Remote trustees must also name themselves when the meeting begins and hear and be heard in the meeting. So if you really need to test your technology ahead of time. The language says electronically, so I'm assuming that trustees may be Skyping in or using Google Hangouts. There are all kinds of ways that they could be coming in, but you need to make sure ahead of time that the technology works. That's always the way, isn't it? Okay, so let's look at the situation where a quorum or more are attending remotely. So now we have a majority of the board attending remotely. And typically you would know that ahead. Tell all your board that they've got to keep track of this. So 24 hours before the meeting, there needs to be a public announcement. A notice must be posted in or near the clerk's office and in 2 designated places. It is up to the library to decide what to designate as those official places. My recommendation would be you follow whatever the town decision is so that there's no confusion. So one of the places is in or near the town clerk's office, and then the other two properly designated places. The announcement and notice must give the physical location of the meeting so any members of the public can attend. And at the physical location for the meeting, there needs to be one trustee or staff member present. So you name the meeting place. It's going to be in the meeting room of the library on the first floor, and either a trustee or a designated staff person must be there. It's still a legal meeting if all of the other trustees are attending remotely, as long as one trustee or staff person is present at the designated meeting place. And I'm guessing there might be some questions by now. What you got for me, Christine?
Well, Miss Howlett, we indeed do have questions.
There's a lot to take in.
Quite
Thanks
a
all
few.
of you for paying attention.
They are indeed.
Okay. I see, will we be able to get a copy of the slideshow to share with our trustee board? Absolutely. It's already posted on our website. We just got it up before the meeting started. So there you can show the PowerPoint. You can have your consultant come, but I think with the PowerPoint you're going to have quite a bit to discuss. Christine, what else?
So I posted that on the question answer so you can see the trustee list, the website for it. But we also have a couple people who came in after you talked about incorporated libraries and whether they are required to meet open meeting law.
I'm happy
so if you could repeat that, great.
You bet. Welcome, incorporated libraries. We missed you when we took the poll. You were very underrepresented, and we know there are plenty of incorporated libraries in Vermont. So here's the deal. Incorporated libraries are not forced to observe the open meeting law. However, the Vermont minimum standards have not changed, and we ask you whether your board meets and warns its meetings according to the open meeting law. If you answer no to that question on the minimum standards, you fail to meet the minimum standards. It's perfectly within your right to do that, but just know that up ahead. So yes, you do not have to follow the open meeting law, but no, you will not meet minimum standards if you do not follow the open meeting law. I think my take on this is it's going to be a struggle initially to get ourselves comfortable with the nuts and bolts of this, but happily it is also a struggle that the school board, the select board, the development review board, there are a lot of other folks who are going to be working on this issue. So I anticipate that, we're going to kind of fizzle around, but we're going to get the hang of this along with the rest of the town. And libraries whose standard bearer, whose standard is always access to information, it makes sense to me that we should be ahead of the game in terms of posting our minutes, posting our agendas, making sure that we're really public. So I hope that answers the incorporated libraries. If you're still not clear, please ask the question in a different way, and Christine will relay it to me. What else, Christine?
When a vote is taken in a meeting, whether by roll call or not, does the chair of the board vote on all motions or only to break a tie?
I don't think the open meeting addresses that. To some extent, I look to Robert's rules for small boards. Very few public libraries have Robert's rules as part of your requirements. If you have bylaws, you need to pay attention to what the bylaws say. For small boards, and a board of 5 is certainly a small board, it is not required, unless it's your practice, that the chair not vote. So that was a great sneaky question. Nothing to do with the open meeting law, but thanks for bringing it up. What else?
Okay, question about what not meeting minimum standards means. Loss of grants, loss of state support, loss of mark records.
Of grants. Loss of grants. That's the big one. And I have to say, I think it's loss of prestige. This year, 141 public libraries out of 158 applications, 141 met the minimum standards. The grant pot at this point in time is very small. Vermont doesn't put a lot of money into grants. The ones that I see are the summer reading program grants, and until this year there's been an interlibrary loan resource sharing grant. I don't know whether that will continue. I suspect we may do something different with those funds. We're working on other interlibrary loan support. So maybe it's not a big deal for you. Maybe you want to drop out. I would encourage you to really explore whether you could meet these standards, though. If that's the only one that's keeping you back, I think you can push yourself and do it. But that's what's at stake. There is no state aid in Vermont. If you're a trustee who's here from another state, say Massachusetts or Connecticut, you're looking for that fact check that comes from the state, that fact check that helps you meet all your goals. We do not have that in Vermont. Vermont is one of a small number of states that has no direct state aid. We have consultants, we have a lot of help, we have an interlibrary loan system. There are many ways that we pump money back to public libraries, but direct state aid is not one of them. Okay, next question.
Yep, we've got a couple more that are on open meeting, not necessarily the new things, but for instance, what about a holiday party for board members? Does it have to be warned? Do you talk about issues and not vote on them?
If you are discussing the business of the library board, you are in an open meeting, yes.
Okay. What constitutes a public announcement? We warn our monthly meetings in the, I'm guessing, the local newspaper, and we post meeting agendas online and 2 other physical locations at least 24 hours prior to our meeting.
You're doing very well. I'm going to cover that as we keep going forward, but I think you've probably already satisfied the nature of the public posting. And maybe this is the minute for me to say, if you feel I haven't given enough detail for you, please, all of you, remember we've got a great Secretary of State. And calling that number, which I'll give you at the end of the PowerPoint, is always a good way to get direct information. I expect they're going to be working very hard on making sure the open meeting is clear. So I anticipate there'll be lots of details that you want to check with them. Do we have anything else on public meetings?
We do. A couple, a couple more on the remote, this possibility of having remote attendance. So
yeah, that's kind of interesting, isn't
it? So one of them is, if the regular meeting place has already been set, can it be changed to a remote public meeting? I'm assuming that what you mean is, can you add some attendees, but let me know if that's not what you mean. Wouldn't be everyone remote, but it doesn't matter.
The minute you know that somebody is going to be attending remotely, you need to get up that notice, that 24 hours prior public announcement. And it doesn't matter that, as long as you've announced it, you're safe. But you really do need to make that public announcement. The notice posted in or near a clerk's office in 2 designated places, giving the physical location of the meeting.
Great. Now, if there is a remote attendee, must the meeting be recorded and saved?
No.
Okay.
Nope, it works the same as normal meetings. There is a clerk taking minutes and reporting what's going on. There is an opportunity for the public to speak at the physical location of the meeting, which has been announced. So no, there is no special recording requirement that's been triggered.
Okay. Yeah, I think we got a clarification about that remote meeting, but it sounds as though we need to go back to what exactly a remote meeting entails, because it wouldn't be that everyone is remote. It would just be that 1 or more people are remote, but you would still have to have a physical open location, correct?
Yes, and you must have at least 1 trustee or staff present at that designated meeting place.
Okay. Okay. There was another one similar to that. Related to that, does the posting of a remotely attended meeting have to be separate from the general posting?
I think you can probably do them together. as long as it's, we're going to get into posting. The remote location triggers the 24 hours prior public announcement, but you're going to be posting everything anyway, so I think it's going to be fine.
Okay.
And it certainly doesn't need to be separate if you're already putting out that public announcement. Just make sure that you've given the physical location of the meeting for the public. You've put that detail in, since there will be trustees attending remotely. Or committee members, that would be another case.
Okay. I think there might be one or two more of things that you're going to get to, so why don't we move on?
Let's forge ahead with public notice. If you think we've missed a question, make a note for yourself, and we'll make sure to give you other opportunities to ask. So next we're going to talk about public notice. So let's talk first about regular meetings. So regular meetings are those very typical meetings like, the way that I'm familiar with it is after there's a new board assembled, typically in March, right after town meeting, the board adopts a resolution and they say, let us meet the first Monday of every month, or the second Thursday, or the third Friday, or the second and third Tuesday. So that resolution is promulgated. There is an agenda. Now this is new. An agenda is now required 48 hours in advance on the website, if you have one, at the town clerk's office, and in 2 other designated public places. So this is new, a posted agenda, even for a regular meeting. The other requirement is if there is an individual who wants a request, or if the media if there's an individual or the media who want the agenda, you must be able to provide that on request. So I think we're anticipating that some people will always want the agenda, and you're going to have to give it to them. So that's a regular meeting, and then public notice for a special meeting. So the special meetings, those are the meetings that come in between the regular meetings. I always think the budget meeting is a great example of that. You're getting close to the deadline. You realize that you haven't done all the work that has got to be done on the budget before it goes to the town or it gets finally approved. So you set a special meeting. The special meeting, you must announce the time, the place, and the purpose publicly 24 hours in advance of the meeting. It's only a day, folks, so it's not a big deal. One day ahead, you must announce the time, place, and purpose. The agenda must be posted on the website, at the town clerk's office, and in 2 other designated public places. So that means there will be a minimum of 3 public places, 3 public postings, and of course, each member of the body, each trustee, or each committee member has to have the posting, so they know when the special meeting is. And the media must also be notified if they requested it. So this is that special meeting, and the thing to remember is 24 hours in advance. I should mention to you also that when we're back on the regular meeting, the board adopts a resolution. So typically the resolution would say something like, the Bennington Board of Trustees will meet the 3rd Thursday of the month in the library meeting room at 6 p.m. If any of those things change, if you can't meet in the meeting room, if you can't meet at the announced time, if you can't meet on the announced day, then you have departed from the regular meeting and you are now in a special meeting. So remember that. Any change triggers the special meeting requirement and the need to post the time, place, and purpose 24 hours in advance. Are the questions just racing in? Yes, they are. What have you got? I'll wait on the emergency meeting. Go ahead, Christine.
So a question posted about the posting of public notice. Is the internet one of 2 locations?
No, no. 3 physical locations, the town clerk and 2 other places, plus the website.
Okay. If If the board has a working meeting to discuss a fundraiser, does that meeting need to be posted with fair warning? Sorry, I'm having trouble reading this. With fair warning to the public.
Yes, it does. That is a quorum of the board meeting to do the work of the board, and it triggers the requirement for the Vermont open meeting law.
Okay. Did that one? I think we're...
I should tell you too, that's not new. You might not have noticed that in the old open meeting law, but that's always been the way it's been.
Okay.
So let's just talk briefly about the emergency meeting. The emergency meeting in my mind is always the water is running down the stairs. So there is no time for 24 hours notice. It's an unforeseen occurrence. We've got to do something immediately. So the stipulation is that it can be held without announcement, without notices, provided that public notice is given as soon as possible before a meeting. If you can't, you can't. Hey, this is an emergency meeting. Now, 3 board members are going to be out of town for the month of August. That's not an emergency meeting. You really want conditions requiring immediate emergency attention. That's the meaning of emergency. So that's it on the public notice. Do we have any more questions on what that actually means? The agenda, the announcement of the meeting?
More public notice. Libraries that support multiple towns. What's the math, as it was put here, on posting to multiple towns?
That is a great question, and I have no idea what the answer is. I think what you're going to do is call the Secretary of State's office and ask them that question. This is one area where, of course, libraries are different than select boards. Typically, select boards are only responsible to one town. So that might be an interesting moment. And when you let me know what the answer is, I'll be happy to do a postscript.
Okay.
Great question. You've stumped me.
All right.
Ooh, what else have we got out there?
Maybe more. If you're changing your day for 1 month, which will make it essentially your regular meeting, do you still have to post the agenda for a regular meeting, or the time and purpose for a special meeting? If your time changes for the regular meeting.
If your time changes, you have to follow the special meeting. So the difference is whether it's 24 hours or 48 hours. If you know ahead that it's going to change, post your agenda 48 hours ahead. That's great. The idea of the special meeting is sometimes things come up suddenly and you might only have 24 hours to deal with it. They didn't want it to be an insuperable barrier to having the meeting, so that's why you've got 24 hours. But yes, even if it's just one meeting, everything else is regular, only the date, let's say, or only the place, or only the time has changed, that creates a special meeting, and you're going to have to pay attention to that. Now that we're posting agendas and notices for both regular and special meetings, I think it's going to get, in some ways, easier.
Okay. Does the library count as one of the 2 other places to post the agenda?
It can. Again, it is up to the board to designate the places where it will post, and I think the library is an excellent place. Just think through, you're in a town, people have the expectation that there will be agendas posted at the town clerk's office. If you add the library, then what will be the 3rd place? So I put it to you, think it through carefully, then make your decision and announce it. You can also announce it routinely on the website. Our public places, our designated places to post agendas are as follows: the bulletin board next to the town clerk's office, the front door of the public library, and that signpost out in East Downers Corners.
Amy, we have a clarification question on the remote meetings. Is it possible to go back to that slide for a minute? It's the one that says if a quorum or more, one or more, It's the next one or the there you go.
If a quorum or more
So
attend remotely.
So it sounds as though that 24 hours prior notice is only required if the quorum or more than the quorum will be attending remotely, not if just one person will be attending remotely?
I think you're right about that. If a quorum or more attend remotely. Yep.
Okay. So in your example of one person being off in Seattle, it would be the regular posting.
Yep. It can be a regular board meeting and a regular posting.
Great.
Yep.
Okay. We have a question that is more general open meeting, so you can tell me if you want to take this later on. It's more about when discussing personnel matters in open meeting. Do you want to take that at the end?
Executive session, I promise.
Yep.
I knew you would want to talk about that, folks, so I put it on the agenda. So let's keep going. Let's we've done public notice, and let's now talk about agendas and something near and dear to my heart, minutes. So agendas. You know what that looks like. We can send you a formal one if you haven't seen one, but it's posted to the library website. It's posted in or near the municipal office and 2 other designated public places. And no, as somebody just made clear with a question, one of those other designated public places cannot be the internet. It is sent to any person who requests it. And, interesting little wrinkle here, the first item of business on the agenda is the addition or deletion of material. That's new with this open meeting law. Other adjustments may be made at any time in the meeting. So that's new. So that was agendas. Now let's talk about minutes. Minutes are required of all public bodies. Minutes must be posted to the library or official website 5 days after the meeting. So the 5-day requirement, that's not new. The website requirement is. And I have had the question already, are we forced to use the library website? Are we forced to use the town website? I think it makes sense to use the library website, but the board actually has the authority to designate its official website. What people tell me is that when they rely on the town to upload minutes and agendas, sometimes that's not as important to the town as it is to the library. If you're having website problems, we do have a consultant who works closely with public libraries. Jeremiah Kellogg would be happy to help you set up a WordPress site. Relatively easy to use. Nothing's super easy on the internet, but relatively easy to upload documents so that you can get those minutes and agendas posted. Okay, so what are these minutes going to contain? They will include the members of the public body present. That's the trustees or the committee members. They will contain active participants in the meeting. So if somebody asks to speak, if somebody is part of the public portion of the meeting, their name will appear in the meeting minutes. All motions and dispositions, so all motions and what happens to them. And it's of course not just motions, it's motions, seconds, amendments, and the vote, and the results of votes. If there is a roll call vote, again, that's triggered when you have somebody attending the meeting remotely, then the names of those people doing the vote will be listed. Minutes are matters of public record. They are kept by the clerk or the secretary of the body. It is permissible, and I know larger boards sometimes do this, it is permissible to have someone else take the minutes. Typically that person would be paid by the board, but it is the clerk or secretary's responsibility to verify those minutes. So we have that officer on the board for a reason. And again, available 5 days from the meeting. Libraries may charge the cost of copies in order to hand out copies. I just went back and looked at some older things about good minutes, and this is Vermont Institute of Governance discussion of minutes that I like very much. It's called Born to Chair. So good minutes, this is just a review, include the names of participants, all motions, votes, and actions precisely described, a summary of what was discussed. So I think even if it's a 3-hour meeting, you want to be able to get that summary and those actions into 2 or 3 pages. It's not a transcript. You're not trying to get every detail. You're just trying to get enough information down so that the board will have a good idea of what was discussed and what the area of controversy or how the discussion went. So for example, there could be 15 minutes of back and forth and argument, and the minutes might just say there was a great deal of discussion about how the collection budget would absorb the cuts voted on by the board. 20 minutes of ardent discussion, and there it is, just a couple of lines. So what are these minutes that you're posting? They will almost always be draft minutes. Very few boards will meet within that 5 days. So I recommend that you indicate with text or maybe a watermark behind your Word document that this is a draft and that it will come up for approval at the next meeting. But remember, this is a permanent record. And I have had questions about does the website last forever? I'm sure the Secretary of State is going to weigh in on this. I would be myself sore oppressed to lose both a paper record and so I'm certainly going to advise libraries to keep a paper record at the desk so you can make copies and give them out. And as the years go by, put those into acid-free binders and also your website record. But I expect the question of how permanent the website is, that's going to come up for all boards later. And that's the end of the discussion of minutes and agendas. So what have we got, Christine, for questions?
Well, several, as you might expect.
Okay.
So do minutes have to be posted just at the library or at the designated sites, I'm assuming, where we post that the meeting is coming up?
I don't see anything about posting the minutes to those 3 public places.
I do not.
They must be posted to the library or official website 5 days after the meeting.
Oh, I see. That was part of the question too, where it said the library or website, but what you meant is the library's website or the town website.
Yes, whatever your official website is. I'm sorry if that wasn't clear. Good question.
Should financial statements be included with the minutes if they're referred to at the meeting? It's an interesting
Good question. I don't know the answer to that. I don't think they are routinely. It says minutes, not minutes and all documentation required for the meeting.
Yeah.
Great question. So we know if you're trying to be clear, you might want to include those so anybody could look at them, but I don't see that the law requires it. And if you'd really like a definitive answer, call the Secretary of State's office.
Okay, this is a common question, I think, that I want to hear from you about. Minutes taken before board reviews them are considered a draft, and
That's
is
correct.
this draft then required within the 5 days?
Yes, absolutely.
And are those 5 days straight days? Are weekends counted? Are they 5 straight days or are they 5 working days?
They are 5 straight days. So if you meet on Thursday, it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday.
Okay.
Weekends count. This is not business days. These
Yep.
are regular days, any days of the week. Good question.
So another one on the minutes where you explained what is included in the minutes. The issue about privacy of those attending. I noticed in the wording that the secretary, when he discussed this with us, it said names of, I think, active participants. So
Yep.
the question is, what about the privacy issues someone may have about having their name posted on the internet in our minutes? Is that a Secretary of State question?
What was the last word you said? Just say the
Sure.
question again.
What about the privacy issues someone may have about having their name posted on the internet in our minutes.
Oh, in our minutes is what I didn't hear.
Mm-hmm.
I assume those people are not going to say anything. I've been asking that question of boards just because I've seen it out there and wondered. And people look at me like I'm crazy. Of course your name would be out there. Your name is out there all the time, they say. I think we might be dating ourselves with these concerns. But for sure, ask the Secretary of State if you're permitted to use an alias, but I don't see anything in the law that allows that. I think this is your name, and if you choose to participate in a public meeting, it gets put in the minutes, and unless you take your website down, which a few towns are talking about doing, and perhaps a few libraries also, it's out there and it's searchable. So yes, that's the way it works.
Now, in those postings of the draft minutes, is that the only thing that's required, or do the approved minutes then need to be posted as well?
So I would assume that the approval in the next minutes would refer very specifically to the earlier minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know whether most boards typically go back and correct the minutes and repost them. In my experience, typically those draft minutes stay up and you have to look at the next minutes when they were approved to see what changes were made.
Okay. Okay, I think you just answered another person who had asked about keeping track of corrections, so let me know if that was not.
In the current meeting, when those corrections are made and the vote is made to approve the minutes, all of that would be reported very specifically.
Okay. Must post at the library building or on the official website, one or the other, or both?
One or the other. So the board designates what its official website is going to be.
No, I'm sorry. I think we're talking about physical location at the library building.
We're not talking about minutes,
versus the website.
Then. Minutes need to be posted on the website, on the official designated website.
Mm-hmm.
My guess is most libraries are going to choose to make that the library website, but a board could decide that the official website would be the town website and all their minutes would be posted there.
Okay.
And I think we should press on if we're going to get to our goal of 7 o'clock and having discussed executive session.
Yeah, just a quick one, Amy, about canceling meetings. Any requirements on where cancellations have to appear?
Cancellations. So last minute cancellations, I guess you do your best to get the word out. I don't think there's anything official in the law about that.
Okay.
All right. Pressing onward to executive session. You know you want to talk about this. Not a lot. I don't think there are any real changes here, but I'm just going to go through it because we certainly want to make sure we cover this. So executive session requires that a member of the board move in open meeting to go into executive session. The member supplies the reason from a very specific list. Not giving you the citation for that list. It requires a majority vote of the body to go into executive session, and no decisions are made in executive session except quasi-judicial matters. I don't know what these quasi-judicial matters are. I believe they rarely come up in public libraries, and that's where I'm going to stand. So some of the things that might be discussed in executive session: contracts, an appointment or evaluation of an employee, but remember that the final decision and reasons for that appointment or evaluation must be disclosed in open meeting. Employee agreements, pending civil litigation, discipline or dismissal of an employee, discussion of records which are not public documents under the Access to Public Records Act, clear and imminent peril to public safety, or emergency response measures. So that's quite a list. But I want to balance out that list by saying it's a real decision to go into executive session. And there are many boards that very, very rarely take that step. So that's something to think about. So I just wanted to give you some language in case this is new to you. So somebody on the board says, I move the board enter executive session in order to, here's the reason from the list, evaluate the director, a personnel issue, since premature general public knowledge would clearly place the public body or person involved at a substantial disadvantage. So that's the reason from the list, and what you're saying is we don't want to evaluate the director in open meeting. The public body and the person involved would be at a substantial disadvantage. Somebody on the board seconds the motion. The board votes, so it's clear that there is a majority that want to go into the executive session. The clerk makes a note of the motion, who made the second, and what the vote was. The board then invites any interested parties, a lawyer, a consultant, the people involved, to come into the session, and the chair says to the public, we're going into executive session. Please wait outside. We'll open the meeting again once the session is open. So we'll open the meeting again once the session is closed. So people get up, they go outside, the board shuts the door, the board meets in executive session. Again, no action can be taken, just discussion. No minutes are taken, and then they come out of executive session, the public is invited back in, and if the board wants to take any action, they take that action in open meeting. So that's what actually happens. That's what it looks like. I wanted to read this to you. This is from the updated Secretary of State's Guide to Open Meetings. Some boards go beyond the requirements of the law and do everything in public. The risks entailed in letting everybody know its business are not small, but there is no penalty for extra openness and a high return on the investment if the public understands you have nothing to hide. I like that very much, and I was quite happy to see Jim Condos quoting it. The quote doesn't talk about quasi-judicial exceptions. That's where the three little dots are. So we're up to questions and answers again. What do we have, Christine?
Well, let's see. Okay. One clarification, again, I was misunderstanding one of the questions about the website posting of minutes. Must the minutes be posted physically at the library, or is posting on the website sufficient?
I think you're going to want them at the library because anyone can request a copy. And it seems to me you're going to need, well, I suppose you don't have to have a physical copy, but my understanding is the requirement is for the website posting. I can look into that a little bit more, but that's my understanding.
Okay. I don't think I have any more for executive session questions.
Okay,
there was one earlier on about that, but I hope that was clarified. If what Amy just mentioned did not answer your question to the person who asked me about personnel issues, please let us know. Okay. Let's see, I think you talked about this one earlier, subcommittee. They're needing...
Subcommittees must follow the open meeting law. Yep.
Designating that space, such as the website or the places where things are posted. How does one clarify that such places have been designated?
So make it as public as you can. Report it in your minutes. If you have a public newspaper of record, typically that's something else you would do in March. Make sure you notify them what your place is, your typical place. Typically all of those things are decided when the new board convenes. And I think people who are used to following public bodies are used to that announcement coming out, typically in March or April.
Okay, great. And I think that answered a couple of questions. Someone had pointed out that they needed temporary space. I would assume that was the same thing, just alert people as much as possible because they were having building going on, changes to the building.
Remember that if you're meeting in a different place, then those meetings are special meetings. I guess you can change the place and announce that the new standard formula will be always in this one place. But any departure from routine, meeting in a different place, meeting at a different time, meeting on a different day, triggers the requirement to consider it a special meeting rather than a regular meeting.
And in terms of the emergency meeting, by its very definition, I assume that that can happen with less than 24 hours leeway.
Yes. Yeah, the rule on that is as soon as you can before the meeting. So if the building is going up in smoke and you're running up the stairs with 3 other trustees to make decisions, obviously there's no time to do a posting for that.
Right.
As soon as possible.
Okay. Director's annual evaluation, does that need to be warned, or is that done in executive session? Or both?
It is done in executive session. You would put an executive session on the agenda, and when it was time to go into executive session, you would very specifically talk about the reason from the official list of reasons for going in. And I think that was the example that I used in my, I move the board enter executive session in order to evaluate the director of personnel issues, since premature general public knowledge would clearly place the public body or person involved at a substantial disadvantage.
Great. Discussion.
Pretty dodgy, but that's what it looks like.
Yeah. Discussions while in executive session, are they recorded anywhere?
No, typically not. In everything that I've seen, except for one board's operating procedures, is that there are no minutes or recordings for executive session. I do know of one board that has separate minutes for its executive sessions. It was such a shock to me to find this out, but a select board that I'm aware of does this. Typically, there are no minutes taken. There are no recordings. You know, individuals might make their own private little jottings, but the idea of executive session is that those are privileged communications on that very narrow list of topics.
Mm-hmm. I have 2 questions about emails. First, must all emails be saved by every board member, or can we save in one location, i.e. the librarian's account?
I don't know the answer to that. I think each board member is responsible as a board member for any emails they send. If you have a technological solution, you can bet the open meeting law does not describe it. So just go back and assume that what would happen if you were served with a public records request? Could you, using whatever technological solution you have, respond to the public records request? Could each board member respond? If the answer is yes, then obviously your technological solution should work. But you're way beyond my comfort zone when you ask questions like that.
Well, here's another one that's beyond mine anyway. Maybe you know this. How long does a board member have to keep email records of board discussions?
Don't you remember, the only thing you're discussing in those emails is setting the time of the meeting. I can go back and do that slide again if you want. But I don't think you should be deleting them. And I expect the public records request could require, you know, going to your internet service provider. So I would never delete anything that had to do with your performance as a board member. I think that's, you know, I understand we're all volunteers and we do these things because we love the institutions, but I wouldn't go deleting those records.
Once you're off the board, years after?
Hey, feel free to ask the Secretary of State those questions. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just going to stick to my guns. I would never delete those messages.
Okay. I am not seeing, wait. Does the Personnel Committee have to warn a meeting to discuss their evaluation?
Absolutely. Every public meeting must be warned, must be posted, must have an agenda, must allow the public to speak. Even though you think all you're going to do is go into executive session and discuss that evaluation, on the agenda it needs to say public session, public invited to speak. And remember, the agenda's got to have a place for additions and deletions. That's a new requirement now. So it doesn't matter that you think all you're going to do is go into executive session. You still need an agenda. You still need to invite the public. You still need to announce. I hope that's really clear. It doesn't matter that it's the Personnel Committee. All the regular things apply. It's a committee, triggers the open meeting law.
Okay. I'm just sending a note to everyone in case someone can't hear, asking if I missed anything. I'm looking up and down. If I did, I apologize. I've got a very long page here. And Amy and I will keep track of these. The questions are saved, so we can go through this afterwards, and if something wasn't answered, send you an answer, thanks to your giving us an email.
So let me just remind you for the last time, the Vermont Secretary of State's office is a great place to ask questions. If you want another take, you didn't think I knew my stuff, please, please, please call the Secretary of State's office. There's the number, 828-2363. We have a lot of information posted on our website, libraries.vermont.gov/library/trustees. If you Google Vermont Department of Libraries and then put into the search box trustees, it'll take you right there. We've got a great frequently asked questions from the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. I look forward to their offering some clinics on this topic, so that will be another opportunity for people to ask face-to-face questions. As I said, I'll be very surprised if Jim Condos doesn't do another transparency tour this fall. I'm happy to be a resource. My email is amy.howlett@state.vt.us, and I think you can find that by Googling my name also. So please feel free to ask these questions. You're helping us understand the terrain, and hopefully we're helping you understand it as well.
Yep.
Christine, if there aren't any other questions.
Just one more. If you could briefly review those additions and deletions to the agendas that you mentioned. Can we go back to that?
Yep, sure.
Okay.
Let's see.
How that's handled in this new requirement.
Yep. So this is from 1 VSA 312D1. Feel free to go right to the statutes. So agendas should have addition or deletion to the agenda be the first act of business at a meeting. Other adjustments may be made at any time during the meeting. And that is new. I don't ever remember seeing that as part of the open meeting law before.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But that makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, at the beginning of the meeting you say, is there something we forgot to put on the agenda that we had to discuss today, and then everyone's aware of it?
Well, it's a little interesting because we also have this need to warn things ahead, so you know ahead of time whether the thing you're interested in is going to be discussed at that meeting. So, you know, a town meeting, for example, somebody can rule that it's just not germane. So I think this is certainly worth taking notice of and getting the hang of.
Okay. All right. I think that will do it.
All right. So you've been a great audience. I'm sorry I couldn't talk to each one of you individually. Feel free to call me at any time. I've given you my phone number there too, 463-0142, and thanks for tuning in tonight. This archive will be recorded, has been recorded, and we'll post it as well. Thanks so much, folks.
Thanks, Amy.